My name is Naomi Hartwell. I'm 38 years old, and the night my boyfriend told me he was engaged to another woman, he was sitting at my dining table, eating food I paid for in a house I owned. Even now, when I think back on it, what unsettles me most is not the betrayal itself. It's how calm he looked when he said it, as if he truly believed he had every right to rearrange my life and expect me to make it easier for him. Adrian Cole was 33. We had been together for 4 years, and he had been living in my house for the last 2.5. By then, our routines had become so intertwined that I had stopped noticing how much space he took up. His shoes stayed by the door. His cologne sat beside mine in the bathroom. His charger was always plugged in near my bed. His coffee cups turned up in random rooms like little markers of a life he had slipped into so completely that I had stopped asking whether he had earned any of it. That evening, everything looked almost tender. He made pasta, opened a bottle of wine, and lit the small candle I usually save for nights when I wanted the house to feel warmer than it was. The kitchen smelled like garlic, butter, and red sauce simmered too long on low heat. I remember standing in the doorway for a second, watching him move around the counter and thinking maybe he had some good news. Maybe he had finally landed a better job. Maybe he had decided to contribute more. Maybe, stupidly, I thought he was trying. The table was set properly with cloth napkins and my good plates, the ones he never touched unless company was coming over or he wanted something from me. "You're in a good mood," I said as I hung my purse on the chair. He smiled without looking at me. "I have something to tell you." That should have been my first warning. There was something strange in the way he said it. He didn't sound nervous or guilty. He sounded bright, almost eager, like he had been rehearsing the moment in his head all day and could barely wait to perform it. I sat down anyway. For a few minutes, he let me eat. We talked about nothing important. Traffic, a problem at work, a dog down the street that barked too much. The ordinary, harmless shape of a life that, as far as I knew, still belonged to both of us. Then he placed his hand on the table between us. That was when I saw the ring. It was a diamond, not massive, but impossible to miss. It caught the candlelight and threw it back in sharp white flashes. I stared at it for a second, not understanding what I was seeing. Then Adrian smiled. Not sheepishly, not apologetically, just smiled. "I'm engaged," he said. I actually laughed once because my brain refused to process the sentence. "What?" He lifted his hand slightly, admiring the ring with a kind of smug satisfaction. "I'm engaged to Bianca. We've been seeing each other for months. I proposed, and she said yes." Everything inside me went still. I set my fork down very carefully and looked from the ring to his face and back again. I wanted there to be a punchline, a hidden camera, any explanation that would make him seem less detached from reality. Instead, he just kept watching me as if I should be grateful he had chosen to tell me in person. "You're engaged," I repeated slowly, "to another woman." "Yes, while living in my house." His expression flickered, just for a moment, as if he disliked the bluntness of that phrasing. "Naomi, don't make it sound ugly." I leaned back in my chair and folded my hands in my lap, because if I had kept them on the table, I might have thrown the wine in his face. "Adrian," I said very quietly, "are you having some kind of breakdown?" His eyebrows drew together. "What? No, I'm in love." The ease of that answer hit me harder than the words themselves. In love. Not ashamed, not conflicted, not sorry. In love. He exhaled as if I were the one making this difficult. "Bianca is amazing. She understands me in a way you never really did. She supports me without making me feel small all the time." I stared at him. There it was. The smallest twist of blame. The first careful attempt to rewrite the story in his favor. This was not just cheating. This was cheating with a script already prepared, one where I would somehow end up cast as the problem for noticing what he had done. "And you're telling me this now because?" He blinked, genuinely confused by the question. "Because we live together. Obviously, things are going to change now, but I thought we could be adults about it." I let out a short breath through my nose. "Adults." "Yes," he said, relieved to hear a word he liked. "Exactly. I figured we could work out some kind of transition plan. Maybe I stay another month or two while Bianca and I find a place. I know the timing isn't ideal, but I wanted to be honest with you." Honest. I turned my face away for a moment because the room suddenly felt too small. Candlelight. Steam rising from the pasta, the soft clink of his wine glass as he moved it. Everything about the scene looked intimate, domestic, almost loving. That was the worst part. He had arranged betrayal to look elegant. I stood up without a word and walked to the cabinet near the kitchen archway. Behind me, he kept talking, growing bolder in the silence. I mean, we've basically been drifting for a while. You know that. This isn't really coming out of nowhere. I poured myself a scotch. The amber liquid shook once in the glass before my hand steadied. Naomi, he said. I took a sip, then turned back to him. He was still seated, still wearing that ring, still looking inconvenienced, as if I were making his engagement announcement emotionally unpleasant for him. I walked back to the table and looked directly at him. Congratulations to you both. His entire face changed. Relief flooded it so fast it was almost grotesque. Really? He said. Wow, thank you. I was actually worried you'd make this ugly. I smiled then, a small one, controlled. Adrian, I said, pack your things. He frowned. What? Pack your things. You have 2 hours. For the first time that night, he looked genuinely stunned. You can't be serious. I have never been more serious in my life. He pushed his chair back sharply. Naomi, I live here. No, I said, you lived here, past tense. His jaw tightened. You don't get to do this just because you're angry. You announced that you're engaged to someone else while sitting in my house, at my table, eating food I paid for. We are done. You are leaving tonight. He gave a short, disbelieving laugh. That's illegal. No, I said evenly. What's insane is you thinking you can turn my home into a waiting room while you build a new life with another woman. He stood up, voice rising. I have rights. I've been here for years. You have stayed here for years, I corrected. That's not the same thing. His nostrils flared. This is emotional abuse. That almost got a real laugh out of me. Is it? Yes. You're throwing me out with nowhere to go. I tilted my head. Call Bianca. I'm sure your fiancé has room for you. He pulled out his phone so fast it was almost theatrical. Then, to my complete lack of surprise, he angled it toward me and hit record. Okay, he said, voice instantly softening into something wounded and performative. I'm documenting this. Naomi is forcing me out of the house after I tried to have an honest conversation. I watched him for 1 second, then I took out my own phone. His expression shifted. Who are you calling? I unlocked the screen, found the number, and pressed dial. 911, the dispatcher said. Yes, I replied, never taking my eyes off Adrian. I need assistance removing someone from my property. My now ex-boyfriend just informed me he's engaged to another woman and is refusing to leave my house. Yes, I'm the homeowner. No, he is not on the deed, not on a lease, and does not pay rent. Adrian's face drained so fast it was almost fascinating. You called the cops? He whispered. I held the phone to my ear and answered the dispatcher's questions calmly, giving my address, confirming there were no weapons, no physical violence, only a refusal to leave private property after the end of a relationship. When I hung up, the room was silent except for the faint hiss from the stove. He was still holding his phone, still recording, but his hand had started to shake. You are unbelievable, he said. No, I said. You just finally met the version of me that stops explaining. For a long second, neither of us moved. Then I picked up my glass, took another sip of scotch, and looked at the man I had loved for 4 years, the man who had assumed I would fund his betrayal, cushion his landing, and help him ease gently into a new engagement while he slept under my roof. You have 1 hour and 55 minutes now, I said. And that was when he finally understood this was really happening. The police arrived faster than I expected. Less than 20 minutes after I hung up, red and blue lights washed across my front windows, flickering over walls that still smelled faintly of garlic and wine. For one brief second, everything felt surreal, as if the house itself were rejecting what had just happened. Adrian stopped pacing the moment he saw the lights. You actually did it, he muttered. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to explain. A firm knock landed on the door. I walked over, opened it, and stepped aside to let the officers in. There were 2 of them, calm and professional, the kind of people who had seen far stranger nights than mine. Evening, ma'am, the older one said. You're Naomi. Yes. And he's the individual you called about? I glanced over my shoulder. Adrian was standing in the middle of the living room, jaw tight, arms crossed, like he was trying to hold himself together. Yes, I said, that's him. The officers stepped inside. The younger one gave Adrian a quick look before the older officer spoke again. Sir, can you explain what's going on here? Adrian let out a breath and immediately shifted tone, slipping back into that controlled, wounded version of himself. This is a misunderstanding, he said. We're in a relationship. We had an argument, and now she's trying to throw me out without notice. The officer nodded slowly, then turned to me. Ma'am, do you own this property? Yes. Do you have proof of ownership? I do. I walked to the hallway drawer, pulled out the folder where I kept my documents, and handed him a copy of the deed along with my ID. My hands were steady now, completely steady. He scanned the papers, then looked back at Adrian. Sir, are you on any lease agreement here? Adrian hesitated. No. Do you pay rent? I contribute, he snapped. It's not always about rent. I stepped forward and unlocked my phone. I can show you my bank statements. Mortgage, utilities, insurance. Everything is in my name. He has never paid toward any of it. The younger officer shifted his weight, clearly unimpressed. Sir, he said, how long have you been staying here? 2.5 years. And during that time, no formal lease, no rent payments, no shared bills in your name? Adrian's silence answered for him. The older officer exhaled slowly, then asked the question that changed the air in the room. Is it true, he said carefully, that you just informed her you're engaged to someone else? Adrian's face tightened. That's not illegal. No, the officer agreed. It's not, but it does affect the situation. I watched Adrian's expression crack just slightly. She's overreacting, he insisted. We were basically already broken up. This is just her being dramatic. Is that true? The officer asked me. I met his eyes. No, we were not broken up. 4 days ago, he was still telling me he loved me. Silence settled over the room. The younger officer let out a quiet breath through his nose. Sir, he said, given the circumstances, this looks like a relationship breakdown inside a home owned solely by her. We are not here to decide a civil case tonight, but we are here to keep things calm. The best course is for you to gather your essentials and leave voluntarily for the night. Adrian shook his head immediately. No, that's not how this works. I've been here for years. I get mail here. It may become a civil matter if either side pushes it further, the older officer said. But tonight, the safest option is for both of you to separate. Panic started to bleed through the cracks in Adrian's composure. So you're just going to let her throw me out? He demanded. The younger officer's voice sharpened. Sir, you told this woman you're engaged to someone else while living in her home. What outcome were you expecting tonight? That landed hard. For the first time, Adrian had no response ready. His mouth opened, then closed again. The older officer softened his tone just a fraction. Look, we're not here to make this worse than it needs to be. Pack what you need tonight, leave peacefully, and sort out the rest through proper channels if necessary. Adrian turned toward me, eyes burning. This is unbelievable. You're really doing this. I didn't raise my voice. Yes, I am. For a moment, I thought he might argue again. Instead, something shifted. Not acceptance. Resentment. He turned away abruptly and walked toward the bedroom, his steps heavy and deliberate, as if each one were meant to be heard. The officers stayed in the living room with me while he packed. At first, it was quiet. Then came the sounds. Drawers opening too hard, closet doors slamming, the dull thud of things being thrown into suitcases without care. Then his voice, low at first, then louder. Yeah, he said into his phone. She's kicking me out. Right now. No notice. No warning. A pause. Then sharper. No, Bianca, I told you. She's being insane about it. She's acting like this came out of nowhere. Another pause. Then I heard the hesitation. The first small crack in the fantasy. What do you mean you can't have me over tonight? Silence stretched. I didn't move, but every part of me was listening. No, I get that you have a roommate, but... He stopped. So what am I supposed to do? Whatever answer he got, it clearly wasn't the one he wanted, because something hit the wall a second later. The younger officer raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. A few minutes later, Adrian came back out, dragging a suitcase behind him, with 2 more bags slung over his shoulders. His face was flushed, and his eyes were bright with anger he no longer bothered to hide. She'll make space tomorrow, he said stiffly, as if he needed me to hear it. We're just figuring things out. Of course you are, I replied. He dropped the bags by the door and looked around the house. My house. The one he had lived in, used, and occupied, as if it had become his by default. You're going to regret this, he said. I tilted my head slightly. Probably not as much as you're going to regret announcing your engagement over pasta. The younger officer let out a small, involuntary sound that he quickly turned into a cough. Adrian's jaw clenched. For a second, I thought he might say something else. Instead, he grabbed his bags, yanked the door open, and walked out without another word. The officers followed him to the driveway. I stood in the doorway and watched him load his things into the car I had been letting him use. I watched him slam the trunk harder than necessary. I watched him sit behind the wheel for a second, gripping it as if he were trying to process how fast his life had changed. Then the engine started, and just like that, he was gone. The silence that followed felt different, not empty, clean. The older officer turned back to me. You handled that well. I gave a small nod. Thank you. Change your locks tonight, he said. And if you don't already have cameras, install them. I already have a locksmith on the way, I said. He gave me a faint, approving smile. Good. They left a few minutes later. The flashing lights disappeared, and the street went quiet again. I closed the door, turned the lock, and leaned against it for just a second. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was simply still. Then I straightened, walked back into the kitchen, and looked at the table. 2 plates, half-finished wine, a candle still burning low. I picked up his glass first and poured the rest into the sink. Then mine. Then I blew out the candle. And in that small, ordinary darkness, something in my life finally ended the way it should have a long time ago. What I didn't know then was that this was only the beginning. I slept better than I should have that night. Not peacefully, not deeply, but without interruption. No footsteps in the hallway. No late-night refrigerator door opening. No quiet resentment breathing beside me in the dark. Just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort you yet, but promises it might. The next morning, reality came back in numbers. 62 messages, 28 missed calls. Notifications stacked so high they blurred together. I didn't rush to open anything. I made coffee first and stood at the kitchen counter, my counter, letting the smell ground me before I picked up my phone. The first message I opened wasn't from Adrian. It was from Bianca. Wow, that was cold. He needed time to move out properly. You didn't have to humiliate him like that. I stared at the screen for a second, then typed back. Your fiancé proposed to someone else's boyfriend while living in her house. You don't get to talk to me about humiliation. I didn't wait for a reply. Next was Adrian. Multiple messages, with the tone shifting every few lines. You didn't have to do that. You embarrassed me in front of the police. This could have been handled like adults. You're making this uglier than it needed to be. Bianca thinks you're unstable. That one almost made me smile. I typed one response. You ended a 4-year relationship by announcing your engagement to someone else at my dinner table. Don't talk to me about ugly. Then I muted the conversation. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I didn't open it immediately. Instead, I walked to the security panel and pulled up the front camera. Bianca. She looked exactly like I expected. Early 30s, carefully styled. The kind of woman who seemed to curate herself even when she thought no one was watching. Sunglasses too large for her face. Arms crossed, like she had rehearsed this confrontation. I opened the door, but stayed inside. Yes? She took off her sunglasses slowly and looked me over as if she were assessing damage. We need to talk. No, I said, we don't. Her lips tightened. You can't just throw him out like that. I already did. He had nowhere to go. That sounds like a problem for the woman who accepted his proposal. That hit, I saw it, just a flicker, before she recovered. He told me you knew about us. I laughed, not loudly, just enough. He told you I knew he was cheating on me? It wasn't cheating, she snapped. You two were basically over. That's interesting, I said. 4 days before his engagement announcement, he was still telling me he loved me. Silence, brief but meaningful. Then she shifted tactics. We're here to get his things. No, I said calmly. He already took what belongs to him. He said you're keeping his furniture. I tilted my head slightly. The bedroom set? I bought it. I have receipts. The couch? Also mine. The dining table you're standing in front of? Definitely mine. Her jaw tightened. He lived here. Yes, I said. He lived here. He didn't build anything here. Behind the irritation, I could see something else now. Doubt. Not about me. About him. You're going to regret being this difficult, she said. I held her gaze. I think you're going to regret believing him. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she stepped back, put her sunglasses back on like armor, and turned away. Come on, she muttered, clearly to someone behind her. I didn't bother checking who. I just closed the door, locked it, and let the silence return. By afternoon, the narrative had already started spreading. Adrian had gone online. Of course he had. I didn't even have to search for it because people were already sending it to me. It was a long post, carefully written, emotional, and performative. He painted himself as the victim of a controlling, manipulative girlfriend who had kicked him out for finding real love. He claimed he had been trying to leave for months. He claimed I had made it impossible. He claimed I had isolated him. I read the whole thing once. Then I set my phone down, finished my coffee, and only then responded. Not with paragraphs, not with emotion, with facts. I opened my camera roll, scrolled, selected, and posted one short line. Interesting version of events. Here are mine. Then came the screenshots. Him texting me, I love you, 4 days before dinner. Him asking me to help cover part of his credit card balance 2 weeks earlier. A payment for a spa booking, one I now realized matched the same day he had told me he was working late. The date was circled, Bianca's name was visible. I added no commentary, just timestamps and proof. The reaction was immediate. Comments started shifting. Wait, you were engaged while living with her? Bro, this isn't adding up. You said you two were already broken up. Then came the private messages from people who suddenly wanted the truth, including one that mattered. Melissa, his sister. Naomi, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I stared at her name for a second before replying. Didn't know what? That he was still living with you. He told everyone you two were done months ago. Of course he did. I leaned back against the couch and exhaled slowly. He wasn't, not to me. There was a long pause before she replied again. He's at Bianca's now. It's already tense. I almost laughed. Already? He told her he had more money than he actually does, she admitted, and now she's finding out. There it was. The beginning of the collapse. Not dramatic, not explosive, just small cracks spreading through something that had never been solid to begin with. The real shift came later that evening when my phone rang from an unknown number. I answered. Hello? Silence. Then Adrian. Naomi, what the hell did you do? His voice was tight and strained. Reported my own property, I said calmly. You reported the car stolen. I walked to the window and looked out at the empty driveway. You took my car, I said, without permission. You let me use it? When you were my boyfriend. A pause. I'm at the police station. I let that sit. I can't prove it's mine, he added, frustration cracking through now. Because it isn't. You're being ridiculous. No, I said, I'm being accurate. He exhaled sharply. This is insane. I need the car. Then Bianca can come get you. She's at work. Then there's something called Uber. Silence. Then, quieter. You're really going to do this? I closed my eyes for a second. Not out of weakness, but out of clarity. You already did this, I said. Then I hung up. A few minutes later, a screenshot came through, an Uber receipt, $73. I didn't respond, I didn't react, I didn't engage. For the first time since that dinner, he was dealing with consequences I didn't have to carry for him anymore. And I had the distinct feeling that everything in his new life was only just beginning to fall apart. By day 4, the silence had stopped feeling quiet. It had started to feel watchful. Not in a paranoid way, not yet, but there was a shift in the air, the sense that something unfinished was circling back. I had already changed the locks on the front door, the back door, and the garage. New codes, new keys, new boundaries. I had also installed 3 more cameras, one on the porch, one facing the side yard, and one covering the sliding door at the back. I didn't do any of it out of fear. I did it because I understood Adrian, and more importantly, I understood what happens when people like him realize they have lost control. It was just after 9 that night when it started. A hard knock, not polite, not uncertain, demanding. I didn't rush. I walked to the security panel and pulled up the front camera. Bianca. And she wasn't alone. 3 men stood behind her. One of them I recognized from Adrian's social media. The other 2 looked like the kind of friends people bring along when they want their bad ideas to feel justified. Bianca stepped forward and knocked again, harder this time. Naomi, open the door! I didn't move toward it. Instead, I picked up my phone and called 911. Emergency services. Yes, I said calmly. There are multiple individuals at my property attempting to force a confrontation. They are not residents, and I want them removed if they refuse to leave. Are they trying to enter the house? Not yet, I said, but they're escalating. Stay inside. Officers are on the way. I put the call on speaker and set the phone down on the table. Then I walked to the door. I didn't open it. I just stood close enough for my voice to carry. You need to leave, I said. Bianca answered immediately. We're here to get Adrian's things. No, I replied. You're trespassing. One of the men laughed. He lived here, another one called out. Half this stuff is his. No, I said evenly. It isn't. A pause. Then Bianca again, angrier now. You're being ridiculous. Open the door. I didn't answer, because at that exact moment the motion lights in the side yard flicked on. Bright. Sudden. On my screen, I watched one of the men break away from the front and move toward the back of the house, clearly looking for another way in. There it was, the line being crossed. Officers are en route, the dispatcher's voice came through the speaker. Do not go outside. I'm staying inside, I said. Outside, the knocking turned into pounding. Open the door, Bianca shouted. You don't get to steal his life. I let that sit in the air between us. Then I said loud enough for all of them to hear. Everything here belongs to me. You are on camera. Leave now. A second later, I heard a metallic sound from the back. I turned toward the screen. One of the men was at the sliding door, hands working at the frame, trying to pry it open. The audacity no longer shocked me. It simply confirmed what I had expected. Yes, I said into the phone, keeping my voice level. One of them is now attempting to force the rear door. Understood, the dispatcher said. Units are arriving now. The first siren cut through the night less than a minute later. Then another. Then another. Outside, the energy changed instantly. The confidence drained first, then the aggression. By the time the police cars pulled up, Bianca had already straightened her posture and rearranged her face into something she probably thought looked righteous. The doorbell rang. This time I opened the door. Slowly. Deliberately. The officers outside were not the same two from earlier in the week, but the dynamic was exactly the same. Authority stepping into chaos. What's going on here? One of them asked. Before I could answer, Bianca jumped in. This woman is refusing to return my fiancé's belongings, she said. We came to retrieve them peacefully, and she... Officer, I said calmly, cutting across her without raising my voice. One of the men with her attempted to force my back door. It's on camera. That changed everything. Immediately. The officer turned to Bianca. Is that true? No, she said quickly. We were just... Come inside, I said. I'll show you. I stepped aside and let the officers in. Then I pulled up the footage. The front camera showed the pounding at the door. The backyard feed showed the man at the sliding door, bending over the lock and trying to work it open. The room went quiet as the video played. Then one of the officers exhaled slowly. All right, that's enough. He turned and said, Everyone outside, now. What followed was not dramatic. It was precise. The man who had been at the back door was pulled aside first. His answers didn't line up. A moment later, cuffs clicked around his wrists. Bianca's voice rose immediately. This is insane. We didn't do anything. The officer barely looked at her. Attempted unlawful entry and trespassing. You were warned to leave. The other two men were issued citations and formal warnings. If they came back, things would get much worse for them. Bianca stood there, caught between anger and disbelief. This wasn't the version of events she had planned. This wasn't a story she could control. I stepped forward then, not aggressively, just enough for her to hear me clearly. Your fiancé lived here for 2.5 years, I said. He paid for nothing. He lied to both of us. If you want to keep pushing this, I can document every dollar and take this much further. Her expression flickered. If you want a legal fight, I continued, I'm prepared for one. Are you? She didn't answer, because for the first time, she understood the difference between a story and proof. They left one by one, the man in cuffs first, the others silent now, Bianca last. She didn't threaten me. She didn't argue. She just walked away. After they were gone, I locked the door, checked the cameras, and turned off the lights one by one. As I moved through the house, I realized something had changed completely. They hadn't come back for belongings. They had come back for control. And that night, they lost it. What I didn't know yet was that the real collapse had already started somewhere else, and it was about to circle back in a way none of them would be able to stop. By day 10, the noise had changed again. It wasn't pounding on my door anymore. It wasn't angry messages or accusations thrown across my porch. It was quieter than that, more deliberate. The kind of silence that comes right before someone finally admits they have been lying. The call came late that morning from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something about it felt different. Hello? There was a pause, followed by a woman's voice. Older, tired. Naomi, this is Janet, Adrian's mother. I leaned back slightly in my chair. Of course. Hi, Janet. I was hoping we could talk, in person. There was something in her tone that made me stop. Not defensive, not accusatory, careful. I'm free this afternoon, I said. We met at a small coffee shop across town. Neutral ground. Public enough to feel safe, but quiet enough for difficult conversations. Janet looked worn, not physically fragile, but emotionally tired in the kind of way that doesn't come from one bad week. It comes from years of slowly realizing something is wrong and choosing not to name it. She didn't waste time. I need to know the truth, she said, both hands wrapped around her coffee cup. All of it. I held her gaze for a moment, then nodded. And I showed her everything. Not dramatically, not aggressively, just clearly. My bank statements, mortgage payments, utilities, every single expense tied to the house, all in my name. Then the messages. Adrian telling me he loved me 4 days before the dinner. Adrian asking me to help cover his credit card balance 2 weeks before that. Adrian talking about our future like it was something real and stable. Janet didn't interrupt. She just watched and listened, and with every piece of proof, something in her expression moved further away from denial. He told us... She started, then stopped, pressing her lips together. He told us you two had been separated for months. That's not true, I said. He said you were basically roommates, that you were difficult, controlling, that he didn't feel safe leaving. I almost smiled at that. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. I never raised my voice at him, I said. I paid for everything. I supported him, and I believed him. Janet nodded slowly, like she had already begun to piece that together on her own. He's been bringing Bianca to family dinners, she admitted. For months. He said you were always busy, that you didn't care anymore. There it was, the full version. Not just cheating. A parallel life, carefully maintained. I was working, I said, paying for the life he was using to impress someone else. Silence settled between us. Heavy, real. Janet exhaled slowly, her shoulders dropping as if something inside her had finally given way. He's always been like this, she said quietly. Adrian, I mean. I didn't respond. I let her continue. When he was younger, he dated 2 girls at once and convinced each one the other was just a friend. We knew. We didn't stop it. We told ourselves it was a phase. Her fingers tightened around the cup. It wasn't. There was no defensiveness in her voice anymore, only regret. We enabled it, she said. His father and I made excuses. We cleaned up after him. We let him believe he could move through life without consequences. I nodded once because that part at least made sense. People like Adrian do not appear out of nowhere. They are shaped slowly by the people who keep making soft landings for them. Janet reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. She placed it on the table between us. This is $5,000, she said. It isn't enough, I know that, but it's something. I looked at it, then back at her. Janet, please, she said gently, consider it an apology, not just from him, from us. For a moment, I didn't know what to say because this was something different from the rest of the story. It was ownership, rare, uncomfortable, real. I reached forward and took the envelope. Thank you, I said quietly. She nodded, relief flickering across her face. Then, after a brief pause, she added, Bianca is already having second thoughts. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? He told her he had more money than he does, Janet said. Now she's seeing the truth. He's asking her for help. She's starting to realize what you were dealing with. I let out a small breath. Not my problem anymore, I said. Janet gave a tired smile. No, she agreed. It isn't. Melissa texted me later that night. Can we talk? Without Adrian knowing. I hesitated for a second, then replied yes. She called almost immediately. The moment I answered, I could hear frustration and exhaustion in her voice. I don't know how you did it, she said without preamble. Did what? Lived with him that long. He's driving everyone insane. I leaned back against the couch. He moved in with Bianca? For a few days, she said. That didn't last. Of course it didn't. He's here now, she continued. At my place. He's doing nothing. No plan, no real job. Just complaining, posting online, and talking about how he's been traumatized. I didn't interrupt. He keeps asking for money, she said. From me, from Mom, from Bianca, from anyone who will listen. Then, more quietly, did he ever contribute at all? I thought about the dinners he cooked with groceries I paid for, the plans he made with money I earned, and the life he described as if it existed independently of me. No, I said, not really. Melissa let out a long breath. Yeah, that tracks. There was another pause before she said, He's telling people you had an open relationship. I laughed then, a real laugh this time. That's new. Apparently you knew about Bianca the whole time and you only got upset when it became serious. I shook my head slowly. The stories were evolving now, shifting, desperate. He can say whatever he wants, I said. That doesn't make it true. I know, she replied. I just wanted you to hear it from me, not from someone else. I appreciated that more than I expected. Thank you, I said. 2 weeks later, she called again. This time, her tone was less frustrated and more resigned. He's still here, she said, and he refuses to leave. I sat up slightly. What do you mean? He says I can't kick him out because we're family. Sound familiar? I let out a quiet breath. Very. Then she added, Bianca dumped him. That got my attention. Already? He kept asking her for money, Melissa said. Then she found out his consulting job is basically part-time work through his father. She lost interest fast. There it was. The collapse. Not explosive, not dramatic, just inevitable. He tried to go back, Melissa added. She wouldn't take him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, He's talking about suing you. I smiled faintly. He can try. He's serious, she said. Emotional distress. Illegal eviction. All of it. I stood up and walked toward the window, looking out at the quiet street. The same street he had driven away from days earlier, still convinced he could control how this story ended. Let him, I said, because by then I was no longer reacting. I was waiting, and something told me that his next move would be the one that finished everything. The papers arrived on a Tuesday morning. No warning, no build-up, just a knock at the door, a signature required, and a thin envelope that carried more desperation than threat. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the kitchen counter, made coffee, and let it sit there like something already resolved. Only after the first sip did I slide a finger under the seal. A cease and desist. Not a real lawsuit, not yet, but written as if it were. It demanded that I return Adrian's property. It demanded that I pay him $50,000 for emotional distress and unlawful eviction. I read it once, then again, more slowly. The language was aggressive but sloppy, full of broad accusations with no real structure behind them. It sounded like power without actually containing any. I didn't feel angry, I just felt tired, not of him, of the pattern. So I called my lawyer. He laughed, not loudly or cruelly, just a short, startled laugh that told me everything I needed to know. He did what? He asked. That's the situation, I said. Let me guess. He announced he was engaged to someone else while living in your house, and now he wants compensation. Yes. Send me the letter, he said. I'll handle it. So I did. The response went out the next morning. 3 pages. Precise. Clean. Devastating without ever needing to be loud. My lawyer did not argue emotionally. He didn't try to turn me into a victim or Adrian into a monster. He simply laid out the facts. Ownership of the property. No lease. No financial contribution. A documented departure after police involvement. Then came the pivot. A counterclaim. 2.5 years of unpaid occupancy at market rate. $48,000. Plus legal fees. Plus documentation to support every number. I read the letter once, then closed the file. Because I already knew that was the end of it. And it was. 3 days later, Adrian's lawyer withdrew. No follow-up, no negotiation, just silence. The kind that comes when someone realizes they picked a fight they cannot afford to continue. But Adrian still wasn't done embarrassing himself. He tried to represent himself. 17 pages of disorganized accusations went to the court, full of phrases like emotional terrorism and love discrimination. None of it coherent, all of it desperate. I didn't even attend the hearing. My lawyer called me afterward. It's done, he said. That fast? The judge dismissed it in under 5 minutes. I let out a slow breath. Not relief, not satisfaction, just closure. I thought that would be the end. It wasn't. A week later, Adrian called me. This time I recognized the number. I almost let it ring out, but curiosity got the better of me. So I answered. Hello? There was no performance in his voice this time. No calm, no control, just strain. I need your help. I leaned back slightly. That's unexpected. A breath on the other end. She won't leave. I didn't need to ask who. Bianca? Yes. I closed my eyes for a second, not because I was overwhelmed, but because the pattern had come full circle so perfectly, it almost felt scripted. She moved in, he continued, after everything, and now she won't go. She's saying if I try to make her leave, she'll accuse me of things, serious things. I didn't interrupt. I let him finish. Because for the first time, he sounded exactly like I had felt. Cornered, frustrated, out of control. I need advice, he said. You got me out in one night. How did you do it? I let the silence stretch just a little longer than necessary. Then I answered, cameras. He didn't respond. Install them today, I continued. Document every conversation, every threat, every attempt to manipulate the story. Another pause. And then? Call the police first if she escalates, I said. Make sure everything is documented. He let out a breath. Is that it? I thought for a second. Then I added, and Adrian? Yeah? Don't move women into your life while you're still living in someone else's home. Silence. Then the line went dead. 3 months later, everything had settled. Not neatly, but honestly. Adrian had moved back in with his parents. Bianca had vanished from his life almost as quickly as she had entered it, leaving behind a mess he didn't know how to clean up. His social media changed too. Less confident, more vague. Quotes about growth, lessons, and mistakes. No specifics. Because specifics require truth. His family started therapy. Melissa texted me updates sometimes. He's still not working. Mom's finally setting boundaries. I wish we'd done this years ago. Janet sent me a holiday card with another check inside, $2,000, and a short note that said, "We're trying to do better." I believed her. As for me, the house changed too. Not physically, in the way it felt. Lighter, quieter. Mine. Eventually, I started seeing someone new. Not fast, not recklessly, just naturally. He had his own place, his own car, his own life. The first time we went out, he insisted on splitting the bill. I remember looking at him for a second longer than necessary because I had forgotten what equal felt like. The last piece of the story came unexpectedly. A few weeks after everything settled, I ran into one of Bianca's former friends at a bar. We talked casually at first, and then more carefully. "There's something you should know," she said. And when she told me, everything made sense. Bianca had not just said yes to Adrian's proposal, she had pushed him toward it. She told him she was pregnant. She created urgency. She made him feel like he had to lock things down quickly. But the timeline didn't hold. It couldn't. If what she was saying had been true, it would have overlapped with the life he was still living with me. When Adrian started asking questions, Bianca changed the story. When that stopped working, she escalated. Threats, accusations, manipulation. Eventually, someone where she was staying installed cameras and caught her admitting the truth. Laughing. Saying she had never been pregnant. Saying she just needed leverage because men were easy to manipulate. I listened without interrupting because none of it surprised me anymore. People like that do not change patterns. They repeat them until something finally stops them. That night, when I got home, I stood in the doorway for a moment. The same place where I had stood the night everything ended. The same door I had locked behind him. But this time there was no tension in the house. No weight. No unfinished business. Just quiet. Real quiet. I walked inside, set my keys down, and turned off the lights one by one. As the house settled into darkness, one thought stayed with me. Not about revenge. Not about justice. Just clarity. He didn't lose me because he found someone else. He lost me because he thought I would stay after he showed me exactly who he was.